it's that old question of, if you go back and kill baby Hitler, I mean, I 100% say, yeah, I killed the baby.
You know you're special, don't you? Can you feel it?
Hey, Den of Geek fans, Aaron Sagers here. We're at New York Comic Con, and I'm speaking to some of the cast of the Mayfair Witches. Obviously, Mayfair Witches and just Anne Rice's work, it's very iconic. But what is it about this series of books that makes it kind of worth adapting now in 2022? Like, what is the appeal of Anne Rice now? What makes her works relevant now?
Anne Rice is obviously incredibly well known and has a huge fan following. And I think that with streaming, you're able to really play with some of the off-the-wall ideas that she had. And I think it's also her sort of unique storytelling. It's really about family and dysfunctional family at the end of the day. And then you get to add this dose of magic, and you still have all these people who are jealous and angry and lustful and all that stuff, and they can just take everything to a crazier place. So we really got to play around with that off-the-wallness of her writing.
I also think that it's very female-centric, and it's very empowering for women. She writes about these very powerful women who find themselves, find their power, find their inner strength, and that happens in this show. We all say that, the TV gives the opportunity to develop the characters and really take the story into places you couldn't go if it was a 2-hour movie. So that's why it's good for TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also, Anne Rice, before there was Twilight, there was Anne Rice, and I think a lot of these genres, the stories that have come prior to her, like with this show, they kind of took elements of her writing, her ideas. So I think just being able to go back to the original and say, hey, this is where it kind of all started, it should be fun. And to introduce a new group of people to her books through this television show, I think that's something that I'm pretty excited about.
The notion of witches in Hollywood, it's been such an interesting evolution, because you have on one hand the green-skinned hag from Wizard of Oz, you have sort of the accused innocent that's out of Salem, you have the evil enchantress, and then you also have the reality of the fact that there are people that practice witchcraft and very much view it seriously as a belief system. So is there like a little bit of navigating through all of these waters, and then how would you kind of define the Mayfair Witches themselves?
Well, you have the source material. So a lot about witches, however, of course, there are people that practice witchcraft. We have people on our set who were Wiccans, or it's going back to the source material. It's based on, Anne Rice was a fascinating woman. She had a lot of the themes of her books are about her struggle with religion, and she was in and out of the church throughout her life. Her views on, she lost a child who was young. Her views on how it affected her romantic relationship and her with her husband, and I think a lot of the themes come from these topics that she was really interested in, and she put them in this really incredible fantasy world. And what's better for that than witches and vampires and all these metaphors for, the human condition?
The show's not out just yet, so I want to learn a little bit more about these characters that you're playing. Cortland, what is his relationship to Rowan? Who is this guy?
Cortland Mayfair is, he's a bit enigmatic. I didn't find out his relationship with Rowan until I read episode 7. So I'm not actually going to reveal his relationship with Rowan, other than to say that Cortland is the patriarch of the family, and in many ways the glue that holds these witches together, and he oversees and manipulates behind the scenes, trying to make sure that the witches have the absolute best experience they can, and wants to control them to a certain degree. Yeah, the audience is going to have to see what happens, because it's really twisted.
It sounds like the world of Anne Rice as well. And Cyprian, right?
Yeah.
Is this character is an amalgam character? Who is Cyprian?
So yeah, he's a combination of two. Aaron, who's part of the Talamasca, and Michael. He works for the Talamasca, and his mission is to observe supernatural events that happen to people or group of people, and they're mandated to just observe until they need to intervene, especially if somebody's in trouble. So when Cyprian meets Rowan, you know, they go through this journey of who she is, why is this happening to her, and what's the connection between her, the family, and Lasher, and how does that affect Cyprian's character?
Am I correct in understanding? So Rowan is a neurosurgeon before all of this craziness happens? Or?
Yes. Well, still, I assume a neurosurgeon after,
Yeah.
but yes.
By day and
By
then...
day, neurosurgeon, and then she finds out not only neurosurgeon, but also a witch.
Yeah.
Which, quite frankly, neurosurgery is very witch-like to me.
Well, and I'm sure if you tried to perform neurosurgery only 100 years ago, it would have been considered witchcraft.
Correct.
So what was an element of the book that drew you in and made you, of this character, and made you say, yeah, I want it. I want this role?
I mean, it's more than just the book, but of course it's the book. It's also the scripts, the showrunner, Esther Spalding, the people involved, AMC. I thought it was the perfect, I mean, AMC is the perfect home for this kind of material. You know, going in to do a television show that might go several seasons, what fun to play this woman who's really strong and empowered and independent in her real life, but then also is a mess too. And then not only is she also a mess, but she is confronted with this incredible new knowledge that she has this family she didn't know about and that she's a witch. And it just was a lot for me as an actress to dive into character-wise. There's a lot of complexity there, so it's fun.
Yeah. And what's Lasher?
Lasher is a dark entity spirit that was conjured up by the first Mayfair witch and belongs to them and is inherited by their sort of, you know, the next in line sort of version. How he's written or like heard about in the book, it's a very, you know, it's a different thing because, as you know, we've been saying, is, you know, it's a huge undertaking, a novel like this, and to put it into script form, you have to sort of have the room for artistic license to play with these things, to understand what they are. And I think, you know, with the wonderful guidance of Esther Spalding and the entire team, I think we've paid such respect to the novel, but at the same time understood that we need to take this and turn it into something that we could watch and see on television, because there's a very different experience, which is reading something and then seeing something, because our imagination has no bounds. But when you are able to put things on the screen, you know, you get to play around with a lot of this. So Lasher is our creation as much as the brilliant Anne Rice's creation. We've sort of done something fun with it.
Yeah, these worlds of magic, I mean, they're fun sandboxes to play in, and it kind of makes you think, like, could you be entrusted with magic? You know, are you a good witch or are you a bad witch? You know, I know I probably should not be entrusted with too much magical gifts because people on the subway might just start disappearing. I don't know. So down the line, could you handle in real life this power, this immense power? Should you be trusted with it, Harry?
Absolutely.
I don't trust that.
Harry could.
No.
Harry's the one out of this group that Jack couldn't. I couldn't. Maybe Tongue Guy. I don't know Tongue Guy, but I couldn't.
He
Harry
answered
could.
that very quickly and a little too assuredly.
Very quick answer for me too. Jack couldn't. God,
Well, the
no.
two of us
Definitely
know.
not. No, it's not working.
No? Can't. How about you?
Nah, absolute power corrupts, right?
Yeah?
I don't know. I think, you know, the human condition, man, it's like we're very selfish. So, you know, I don't think I'll be able to justly do it right if I was given such a power. Like, nah.
But I love that question because that's one of the things in the books is are these people good or evil?
Yeah.
And the truth is, as you go through these, is you're kind of, but how do you choose to use your power? And ultimately, you might think that you're doing good, and you convince yourself that you're doing good, but what you're doing is really, you know, actually effed up, but you've justified it because you want it or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of evil happens in the world, in this world that is at the hands of people that say that they're out to do good and that they're out to look after you. So,
Well, the justification of evil, isn't it, as well? There's certain moments where people feel justified. It's like, where's the line drawn? and you could think you're doing something right, or you do take it into the elements of revenge or anger, or sort of like, you know, if you're seeing something bad happen, should you do something bad? It's that old question of, you know, if you go back and kill baby Hitler, you know, I mean, I 100% say, yeah, I killed the baby. But I'm like, if you knew it was Hitler, but it's like, you know, it's like that crazy thing of like, well, like, what do you do to prevent it if you do have certain powers? It's interesting.
I think we're going to take that quote out of context. Just kill the baby. That's going to be your
That's
social
what
media.
I say.
Jack,
Kill the
Jack
baby.
can't handle it.
Yeah. Okay, so with all that said, Harry, I'm throwing it back to you. You sure you can handle this power? That made me feel very good about this situation. Obviously, we have the Interview with the Vampire. We have the Anne Rice Chronicles. They are now part of the same family. Are you interested in having a little bit of a crossover with Lestat, with the Interview with the Vampire characters?
Heck yeah! I mean, it's wonderful. Like what they call the Anne Rice universe. So it's like, I mean, the Talamasca, they are part of the Interview with the Vampire. Like, you know, it's this organization that's Anne Rice wrote about, you know, monitoring the supernatural. So it's a natural fit for us to eventually cross and see what happens there.
We're celebrating spooky season, Halloween, and I always like to find out about sort of the urban legends, the maniac, the killer at the end of the block, the creepy house in your old neighborhood. Tell me something about those stories from your childhood. Did you have like those legends, that monster in your neighborhood?
I went to boarding school at a really young age. I was 7 when there, and there was this one called Bloody Mary, and they literally said she was murdered and sort of executed around the river at our boarding school. And they said at a certain time of night, you'd ran around the pond and you said Bloody Mary a few times, and she'd appear to you and stuff like that. And it ruined my life. It was awful.
Yeah,
so
we had that in the mirror.
I don't know if
too.
yeah, totally. It was like the whole vibe of like saying the name. I think a lot of the urban legends, they're the same story that's sort of like been adopted by all over the world in different forms of saying certain things, running around saying a certain thing. It's like the Ouija board and stuff. It's like, yeah. My life was plagued by spirits.
Oh my God.